Okay, let's go over your Design 498 work for this week for ISO. We've gone over Section 8.1, determining the requirements. You pretty much know how to do that now. You've been reporting on that very well. And we've talked about acceptance criteria and what they are and how you measure it. And I think you guys are doing pretty well on understanding those, maybe not on having evidence that you've recorded those things somewhere, but that's probably getting better as you go. And then we talked about understanding the critical steps, places where people are supposed to review things or coordinate with you or submit things or have tests or trials or deliveries. Those are all critical steps that are part of the process. And do you know what they are, and how do you know, and how do you record that they got done if it was your responsibility, things like that. So now we've got a new thing, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but many of you are at the point where you need to be concerned with this now. So this is, do you know the statutory and regulatory requirements that are applicable to your product, your service? And that comes from 8.2.3.1, where the organization, that's the design hub, shall conduct a review before committing to supplying the products. And part of that review is statutory and legal regulatory requirements. So we're all pretty familiar with those for like the Boeing Max. That one did not meet regulatory or statutory requirements. And they didn't even do the right process. And they went well outside of those. And that was software as well as hardware. It was both. So this does apply to software. Another one that we're all familiar with is the Volkswagen diesel disaster, where their cars did not meet regulatory or statutory requirements for emissions. And that one was also software related. So hardware and software come together in many cases. And if you're going to be working, you have to know what they are. So, like for a 3D printing person, they would have to know, is this I'm going to make a mug. Is somebody going to drink out of it? If they're going to drink out of it, does it have to be non-toxic? If it's non-toxic, does it have to be FDA approved non-toxic? And if they're going to put it in the microwave, what does it mean to be microwave safe? So those are all things that we can sort of relate to. But software is maybe a little bit harder. So let's talk about that. And there's other things besides software too. There's pictures, there's written words, there's music. All of these have statutory and regulatory requirements that might meet them. And so here is a list of some of them, and you should become familiar with these terms. You need to go look these up if you don't already know them. Now, I posted the 508 requirements in the 498 group text chat channel. So you should look those up, and they're closely aligned with the ADA. ADA is Americans with Disability Act. Section 508, I believe, is part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And each of those has some very broad statements that you may not discriminate against disabled people by making it hard for them to do the work that other people would do. So you can imagine that colors on a screen or brightness on a screen or being blurry on a screen or not being able to be heard from your sound system or having tiny little letters or being in colors that you can't see. There's many, many, many of these things. Text readers are another big one. So these are These are regulatory and statutory requirements. And you should look those over. ADA and Section 508 both have areas that have to do with things, physical things, and reasonable accommodations for those. And they all have electronic software communication type things and reasonable accommodations for that. Another area where there is regulatory and statutory requirements are in copyright and intellectual property rights. As an example, if we make a video and we take some music off the web, we have to be sure that we are licensed to do so. If somebody is expecting to make money off of their intellectual property, they made the song, they sang the song, they distributed the song, they put it on the web to make money, they deserve that money. If they just said, hey, I did it and you can hear it, but nobody gets to copy it, period, because that's just the way I am, we need to respect the intellectual property owner's rights to say that. So we have to be very careful that we are accommodating the rights of people that hold copyright and have intellectual property rights. Pictures. Here's a great example. We take a picture of a Lincoln welder. We do a 3D view of the weld shop, and we put it on the web. And Lincoln welders might call us up and say that's an unauthorized use of our logo on that welder. Right there, we did not authorize the use of that. So and they would be right if that's the position they've taken. I've had it happen to me where I put an icon for a website that I was linking to on one of my own websites, and I got a takedown request, demand, because they had not checked out my website. They did not authorize their logo to be used on the website. They loved the fact that I was linking to their website, but I needed to make sure that my icon, their icon, did not give the appearance that they were supporting or supportive or collegially or collaboratively aligned with my website. So it gets pretty big. It gets pretty hard. The best thing to do is know the ADA and the 508 and meet the requirements, period. That's the best thing to do. The next best thing to do when you're talking about copyright and intellectual property is always get your materials either your own use that you made. Now, if that's the case, if you did it for the Design Hub, American River College owns those rights. We let you use them freely. You can even make money off them if you want, but we own the rights to it. If you did it for the Design Hub or for a class that you took, or you go to one of the many sites that are available that provide Creative Commons or some sort of common licensing that allows you to use it. And you have to just read the license and see what they allow you to do. So that's some of the things that you're going to have to start looking at very soon as you get closer and closer to having a product ready to go. And the earlier that you can look at that, can you imagine having a product ready to go and violating the intellectual property and having to go back to square one? So it's very, very important. I have a lot of experience with this in my working field, some of it a little bit nefarious and some of it right on and excellent. So I've seen both sides of the equation. And in the Design Hub, our rule is you always respect the intellectual property rights of others, and you always do your best to meet ADA and Section 508 requirements when you're talking about electronics. So you have to become a little knowledgeable about those. I can do a little bit more work for you on copyright and intellectual property rights. I think we've been asked to do that. For the Section 508, as it relates to software, I think I'll have to leave you mostly to your project leaders, Professor Tack, maybe Tristan. I can help with that a little bit, but I'll be looking to see that you have your licenses or your proof that you are meeting these requirements when it comes time to present your work and your project checklist at the midterm. This will be a key thing. So learn how to do it as best you can. Now, if you flub it up, of course, that's just a learning opportunity. It doesn't mean you're fired. It doesn't mean that we can't use your work. It just means that we have to do extra work to keep going on it. All right? So this is a very, very, very important one on your quality blog this week. I'd like you to be able to address this some. And so you'll have to listen to this recording. And I'll be looking for this on your, not your quality blog, on your quality reflection. Sorry, my apologies on that. On your quality reflection, you should be relating to section 8.2.3.1, knowing the statutory and regulatory requirements. There is more than ADA 508 copyright and intellectual property rights, but this is a good start.